Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the conversation on climate action and sustainable development plans. We have our three facilitators that are going to be supporting this conversation today: Angelica Chavez Duckworth, Don Oleksy, who we're hoping will be able to join us shortly, but
I'm
she's a
here.
powerhouse from
There's
the
just
energy.
something wrong with my webcam. I'm here.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
awesome. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so you can hear me,
Awesome.
you just can't see me. I don't know what's going on with the camera. This hasn't happened before.
Okay. Um, well, you can make it, Don. Um, Angelica, and myself, Samantha, are going to be facilitating and help support the conversations today. But as we said, today's really about giving the mic to you. So with that, I'm just going to go through. If you could go to the next slide, Jelly, please. A really quick introduction. As Jelly said, please go ahead and rename yourself with your city or organization and your pronouns. And feel free to communicate with us in the chat. But we're just going to do a really quick introduction of what our community of practice is, who Greenlink Analytics is, and what our Greenlink Equity Map is. And then I'm going to give some brief directions, a guide on icebreakers and questions. Then we'll go into discussions in breakout rooms, a debrief afterwards, and a Q&A and closing. And that discussion is going to be a good portion of our time today. So really looking forward to that. Go ahead to slide, Jelly. Yeah, with that, we're going to get started. And thank you again for the patience this afternoon. So our community of practice, this is a space where we connect leaders advancing environment and social equity and learn about topics that improve our work through peer-to-peer conversations and data literacy. Down here below, you're going to see our community team who puts these together, some of us behind the scenes, some of us here today. And our team focuses on people-first approaches to research, policy making, and we do this by fostering city-community collaborations, humanizing data using tools like GEM, and by emptying that we're all part of an ecosystem moving change forward together. So with that, we're going to go to the next slide, please. Now, who Greenlink Analytics is, we are an Atlanta-based 501c3 focused on energy and equity research. We work with cities and community-based organizations nationwide, and we work together to push forward a fast and fair clean energy transition. You can learn more about us on our website that Ruth shared with you. And we're going to go to the next slide. And the last thing I'm going to share today is our GEM tool, the Greenlink Equity Map. So this is a visualization tool to make data easily accessible to everyone. It's used by over 60 cities, 93 community-based organizations, and currently has over 730 active members. But we use this map to give visualizations to different burdens and experiences communities are having nationwide to help drive policy and funding for communities. Now we're going to go on to the next slide. So as I said, I'm going to keep it brief because we're here today to learn and have conversations together about climate action and sustainable development plans. So right before we get into the discussion, next slide, please. I'm just going to really briefly say when you get into your breakout rooms, we're going to have an icebreaker. So in your group, share your name, organization, and pronouns, and a sentence or two on where you are in your planning or what brings you here today, and enjoy the facilitation and the conversations. You're going to have about 37 minutes in these groups today. And again, thanks for the patience with the technical difficulties firsthand. And then on the next slide, we have, these are the questions that were shared out originally. And we'll sure to in the chat you can also see as we're conversing if there's any questions in particular you all want to address, and looking forward to your conversations. So with that, I'll ask, do we have the breakout rooms ready, Ruth?
Sure do, and I'll go ahead and open them.
And Sammy, I
All
just
right.
want you to know your internet is cutting in and out. So in case some folks didn't hear that, I just want to get a quick repeat in case you didn't get all that. But we are going to be headed into some mini breakout rooms to just introduce ourselves, have some icebreakers, and talk about our own planning processes, or if we're not in a planning process, to kind of discuss why we're here today. So that is what we're going to be breaking out to now.
Yeah, thanks, Jelly. I was madly thinking I needed to reset my internet or something. Glad to know it's not me.
Nope,
No,
not
thank you
you.
for catching that. I
All good.
hadn't noticed it. Okay.
All right, well, here we go. And Dawn, good to see your face. We can see you now.
Okay. Go ahead and join our breakout room.
Hi, Robin. Give me 1 second. I'll assign you to your room.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll let everyone trickle back in here slowly. I know it's always hard to interrupt conversations. God. About 20 seconds and we'll bring them back into the main room for our debrief session. Here we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the main room. Apologies for having my video off. My internet connection decided not to be my friend, so I am still here. And I'm excited to debrief and hear about what's some of the strategies, approaches, what you were learning in your breakout spaces. So I don't know if people want to raise their hands or just come off mute, please go ahead and we can start sharing what was learned today. So yeah, Ruth put in the chat, the question we're going to start with is for debrief, thinking about the strategies, approaches that you were taking for creating these plans from your breakout room discussions. And if no one wants to come off mute, me and Jelly can start the conversation.
Thanks, Samantha. I'm going to give people some time here. I also just want to voice something I mentioned to my group is that questions are also a part of strategies and continuing the learning space. So if there are questions that came up, additional questions that came up through your discussion, please feel free to voice those here as well. But don't be shy, there's not many of us today.
I can kick us off if nobody else is getting ready to go off mute. So in our small group discussion, you're welcome. In our small group discussion, it was kind of interesting because I currently work with a CBO, and one of the other participants in my group actually works for the city that our CBO resides in. So we work together on, or we have worked together on our previous climate action plan, or I guess I should say previously worked together on our current climate action plan. But we talked a little bit about what engagement looks like moving forward and how to make sure that individuals and groups that are typically not brought to the table, how we can ensure that their voices are heard in an equitable way that doesn't feel transactional. I think what I'm leaving with and what I'm kind of chewing over still right now is Jelly said something about the difference between, well, I'm going to paraphrase it, not as beautifully as she said it, but basically what I'm kind of contemplating is I think oftentimes as a nonprofit worker working with city government, the term organizing can sometimes be like a scary term to individuals that work for city or local government. But it's important to remember that at the heart of environmental justice is organizing and community ownership and community power through organizing. And so what I'm chewing on right now is how can I, as a local nonprofit group, help and support local community organizers while also maintaining a very collaborative and strong working relationship with city government. And I think oftentimes as the local CBO, we kind of become the liaison. And so, yeah, I'm just working through that and thinking about what that could look like.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Katie. That's really insightful and cool to hear about what you were talking about in your group. Does anyone from Dawn and I's group want to share about something we talked about or was brought to attention? If not, I know I have some things from our discussion. No? Okay. Well, I know we had one of our members have to leave early, but they brought to the forefront about not forgetting your tribal communities in the plans and making sure to have them a part of the discussions, and if it's especially if they're they're going to be affected. We have people working in energy, we have people working in climate, we have people working with water. And so it's really important to remember, like, in this ecosystem, all of us are being affected. So if you're in close proximity, or especially with waterways, making sure you're talking to tribal communities as a part of the planning, and getting in. So I really appreciated that sharing. And then we talked about some of the challenges knowing to go to in your group, for learning about the plans in place and making sure to utilize resources, and having having access to funding, and applying for the grants and the aid that's available out there, because there's a lot out there right now. So putting the time and energy into that to get the funding to support them. We also talked about interdepartment stewards. Dawn, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more to that, but I thought that was really insightful. And Matt brought up advisory boards, because these are both really important to working with community and working internally as city with those interdepartment stewards, and knowing who's working in what and who can be your collaborators and teammates in these projects.
Yeah, sure. We went through in Richmond, once we developed all of the strategies for the plan, we uh internally, sustainability office went through and identified which ones we could actually move forward on, on our own, or which ones really depended on another department to initiate. Say, if it had to do with urban forestry, then we needed Department of Public Works urban forester to do it. Or if it had to do with recycling, it was the solid waste department. If it was fleet vehicles, we needed the fleet department to champion it. So we identified who all those stewards are and put that department in the plan, and made sure that we had their permission ahead of time. So we weren't necessarily publishing anything without that email approval. And so now, a year later, as we're going to start some of these projects, they already knew it was coming, and they've already agreed. The department directors already assigned the person to work with. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Dawn. I appreciate that. I wanted to take this time for debrief. If there's any more comments people want to share, this is the time and space. Please feel free to come off mute, or if you have questions, because we're getting towards the end here. We have about 6 minutes left, and I want to make sure if there were any lingering questions or comments anyone wants to share, I give some space for that right now. I know a question we had while people are thinking. I know I'm usually a crock pot, so it takes me a little bit to think of questions. But if feel free to come off mute or put them in the chat. But one of the questions thinking about is based off some of the challenge that were discussed in your breakout groups. What kind of support do you think would be most helpful in addressing those challenges? And I know Dawn and Matt, if you want to share anything about with your experiences, or anyone else leaning into my group, because I get to talk to them more. But please.
What was the question?
It's from some of the challenges that we discussed in breakout groups, or what kind of support might be helpful for addressing challenges. And I know you gave like the interdepartment stewards as one, and we were talking about scale questions, and knowing about area and data a little bit. But I'm wondering what would be helpful in addressing challenges people have when they're starting their plans.
Well, I'm actually also reading the question in the chat about how to involve community groups. And I think it's all related, because by leaning on those community leaders and incorporating them into your planning process, you're already a step ahead. So I think that's a really helpful way to get started, because we don't want to be these, small offices of, 1 to 4 trying to do all of this work. All we want to do is, kind of elevate it and organize it and then disseminate it so that other people can take it on. Making it a community-owned plan is kind of my biggest recommendation for that.
Demi, I can share some things from our groups. We did talk, I pulled some strategies out of the conversations that we were having, especially. So both kind of applies for those starting out, but also those that are currently involved. And also just wanted to voice here that, we are actually building off of Dawn's great work at the City of Richmond and their climate action plan. So if you did not see or were not part of that community practice last time, please refer to that. There's a lot of these like deeper strategies and how to use data and how to engage community within that climate plan and within that community of practice, or reach out to Dawn. She's happy to talk with you. But specifically in my group, one of the things we noticed is that like there are a lot of plans, y'all. Like we have the CPRG, the climate pollution reduction grants, right? That have these regional comprehensive plans. We have local plans that we have to update every so often that we're committed to. And we're like, okay, how do we actually streamline all of these things? And one thing that I came into focus here was around messaging and communication and making sure that, first of all, we establish some common language between like community residents, or as like lay people and the technical experts. So those are like those intermediaries and getting into city government to make sure we're not talking over people. And we had this like fun saying of, just like free yourself from technical language and acronyms in this space. And one of the things that Columbus is working or is doing to help with that is that they're partnering with a local group that is focused on messaging and distinguishing the difference between each of these plans to try to help the community understand the difference, but also not overexhausting them with information around some of the same things. Because again, if we use equity and decarb and all these words over and over again, they tend to just kind of get glazed over because they're like, wait, I thought we were working over here, but now we're working over here, but this is for this, right? So being very clear about the differences and also using very simple language that we can attach ourselves to, that's very tangible for us to know what these issues look like. So language and messaging, as much as it tends to get overlooked, it's a very important piece within all of this. And the last thing that I will share with you is that with messaging, it's important to ask, how are we getting the message out? So as I mentioned, Columbus is working with a local group to actually get the message out to people. But Katie also mentioned that their group and their role as a nonprofit is to actually be going to community in ways that are not just online. So not just depending on social media, not just depending on the city website, but actually going to community events and being a participant in the community, tabling events and canvassing and making sure you're meeting community where they are in their spaces. So that being another aspect. So not just what we're saying, how we're saying it, and how we're getting the word out, I think are important things to take away.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. With that, we are at time, so I want to thank everyone so much for sharing. If we could just go to the last slide, Jelly. I just want to emphasize this conversation doesn't end here, so I don't want to I know I feel like I'm cutting it off after such good information. I want to thank you all, and especially Dawn for participating today. Thank you, Dawn, for coming to help with facilitation and support and bring all your knowledge to the table. Thank you to all our partners. And I want to let you know that, again, this conversation doesn't end here. So I'll be reaching out with an email that'll include all the information we shared today, as well as some notes from me and the team on what we're hearing. And you can reach out to any of us at the emails here. I'll make sure Dawn's email is also included in that follow-up. So if you have questions as you're starting to plan or coming across things, you can collaborate, because this is a community network. And you're not in this alone. We're all here to work together. I'll also share the last community of practice with Dawn that we spoke of, and it was shared in the emails. If anyone wants to follow up and watch that, there's a lot of really great information that Dawn and Matt share about the planning they did with the City of Richmond. And I can stay on a little bit extra if anyone has any follow-up questions. I'll be here for a little bit. But thank you all again.
Thank you,
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.